Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 11th day of March, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got, let's see, snowfall totals around, around the Anchorage area, quite varied from west to east across the city. Anchorage at the airport, just 2.6 inches. Total, while Government Hill 5 inches, and then you get over toward Huffman, about 10 inches there, Potter's Marsh, and then on up to Campbell Creek Park, 14 inches, so big increases. You headed over toward the Chugach Mountains, and Muldoon 16 inches along with Middle Hillside, and Nanaca Valley 15 inches, and Glen Alps, well, up the upper hillside there, anywhere from nearly 20 inches, Glen Alps 18, and then Birch Road, spotter called in 20 inches of snow fallen. So really varied, but good March snowfall over the last, 24, 36 hours. Anyway, on to the hazardous weather graphic. That's pretty much ended now, although a winter weather advisory remains out for eastern Turnagain Arm, Portage, Whittier, until, let's see, 11 p.m. this evening for continued winds gusting 35, 40 miles an hour and blowing snow, reducing visibilities down to half mile or less at times there. And Bristol Bay, winter weather advisory out for another system, weaker system coming in currently out there. That's out until midnight. Winds gust 35, maybe 40 miles an hour with blowing snow there, also reducing visibilities to half mile at times. Otherwise, we've got up to the north, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, blizzard warning out that kicks into effect midday on Friday and continues through Saturday night into early Sunday for blizzard conditions there with winds gusting to 55 miles an hour with blowing snow, reducing visibilities to a quarter mile at times or even whiteout conditions. And then on the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula, as well as the north coast of the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, on up the northwest coast there, Kivalina to at least a Point Hope there. That's a winter storm watch in those areas for possible blizzard conditions. That kicks in late Friday night through Sunday afternoon. And right now this looks like a possibility of seeing a blizzard during that time frame now, so it's just a watch, winds kicking up to 50 miles an hour, snow and blowing snow with occasional whiteout conditions. And then off to the east there, we've got winter weather advisory currently out until, until this evening, or actually until for tonight. Actually, it remains out for tonight there for the Upper Tanana Valley 40 Mile Country and the Eastern Alaska Range, although conditions will be slowly improving during that time this evening, but still gusty winds up to 40 miles an hour occurred Paxson on up to Northway and over the Upper Tanana Valley there. Now Creek blowing snow again, reducing visibilities in that location. And then when I left off there, winter storm or a blizzard watch actually out for the Thompson Pass, well, right at Thompson Pass, and that's out for later tonight, actually tonight and into midday tomorrow there for blizzard conditions with winds gusting possibly as high as 55 miles an hour and blowing snow through the pass there. So now going on to satellite imagery, you can see the clouds kind of hanging a real slow moving upper trough here, slowly pushing eastward, and so the snow and clouds kind of slowly ending from west to east across Alaska, southern Alaska, actually the entire eastern interior there under the influence of that upper level trough. As you can see, the clouds all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast, and then behind that another system developing, another mass of moisture there with a weak low pushing across the Kuskokwim Bay area into the delta and currently pushing into the northeast Bristol Bay area, Iliamna Lake, They had winds gusting pretty gusty. They're starting to come down now as that system approaches. We're gusting 40 to 50 miles an hour there through Kamishak Gap and Iliamna, Pedro Bay, and those areas. And winds pretty gusty at Dillingham now as that moves in, gusting upwards of 40 miles an hour with that. And some snow and blowing snow, and that's the reason for the winter weather advisory for Bristol Bay for tonight. Otherwise, showers, the cold air coming across Kodiak Island, dropping south and then pushing eastward there with Kodiak State Airport having a peak wind gust of about 56 miles per hour. One of the higher ones reported, not the highest, but one of them. And that cold air, the over water trajectory there enough that snowfall levels are quite low over the panhandle, but not quite at sea level. There was some about a half inch of rain fell at Metlakatla, while Petersburg had about a quarter of an inch of wet snow or rain and snow. So really wet snow at sea level, but any elevation at all, and that's in the form of snow across the panhandle. But mountains are heaviest down south and not that heavy even there. And otherwise, next system farther out to the west there, showing with the clouds spreading into the western Aleutians from a position west of Shimia, east of the Komodorskis, and south-southwest flow pushing a warm front up over the western Bering Sea, and then coming over the top of that ridge there, pushing eastward into Bristol Bay. The next system bringing the snow and winds into the southwest interior, mostly Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Delta area, maybe the southern Kuskokwim Valley getting clipped by that. And then the tighter gradient there across south-central Alaska, with winds gusting up to about 50 miles an hour at Portage today, and anywhere from 30 to 40 miles an hour, at Whittier. We're seeing gusts of about 50 miles an hour, and Portage about 30 to 40 miles an hour. Winter weather advisory continued there. And Paxson also had pretty gusty winds up to about 40 miles an hour, as it did Northway from the north-northwest. Otherwise, snow slowly ending from from west to east there as that system continues to slowly edge eastward, and then higher pressure building out over the Bering Sea ahead of that system will be slowly moving eastward, and it'll take days actually to move across the state, several days of dry and mostly clear weather coming up for much of interior Alaska. But for tonight, that's starting to come into full array more or less, with a pretty potent high center there over the central interior right on the Yukon River. 1,037 millibars, so slowly decreasing clouds and slowly diminishing snow and snow flurries along the eastern border, Copper River Basin, eastern Alaska Range, and still quite windy, especially through the mountain passes there, the Alaska Range and south central Alaska. Kodiak Island stays pretty breezy, low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, and less wind, almost no gradient over the panhandle, the one system moving out, and then starting to see some shower activity from that trough off the coast there coming back in. And eastern Arctic coast getting clipped by a couple of week or 1 week trough there, keeping a chance of light snow in toward mostly Kaktovik and Barter Island with dry conditions. Clouds eastern Beaufort Sea coast becoming mostly clear over the western Arctic coast north slope, as well as central western interior. Bristol Bay clearing out as that system moves through, and storm force winds coming into the west central Aleutians ahead of that front in western Bering Sea. And that will weaken enough tomorrow. We'll lose the storms. We'll keep the gale warnings pushing into Adak and Atka with rain and a good push of warm air from south to north, pushing the surface freezing level all the way up to the Russian coast. And snow and blowing snow with the blizzard warning kicks in midday tomorrow there for the St. Lawrence Island area, and eventually the Bering Strait coast, with high pressure locked in over the interior, mostly clear skies, lingering light snow flurries. Northeastern Copper River Basin, Northway, Tok, in those areas, but south of Eagle, otherwise really mostly clear over the interior. And the panhandle continues kind of unsettled with rain and snow showers, but nothing too heavy. Outlook for Saturday, high pressure holds over the interior, mostly sunny conditions, and on the chilly side from the Arctic coast right down into the Gulf of Alaska. That system now hitting the southwest coast with increasing wind, rain, and rising temperatures, so rain and snow. Blizzard warnings, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, and low pressure keeps it unsettled over the southern panhandle, but dry and cooler and a little breezier in the north there. But lots of sunshine from the North Gulf Coast right up to the North Slope and Arctic coast. And west winds 20 to 40 miles an hour for the Aleutians, with numerous rain and snow showers. Low temperatures for tonight, 20s for the Panhandle and falling back below zero, Copper River Basin. Even the Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, 10 below to 10 above for the lows tonight. 25 below there, 24 below over at McGrath, and below zero, Bristol Bay, lower 20s, Kodiak Island, and 25 to 35 below in the interior. Some areas may even push down toward 40 degrees below zero over the North Slope and maybe possibly the Koyukuk Valley, and below zero conditions right into the northern Bering Sea. Lows in the lower 30s over the southern Bering and the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, 30s for the Panhandle, near freezing north to near 40 south. In the mid-teens, south central Alaska, even on down into Kachemak Bay, just 19 for Homer and Seward. And pulling up to about 11 in the Copper River Basin, upper 20s Kodiak Island, single numbers southwest interior. And staying below zero in the Tanana Valley there, 5 to 10 below for your highs, all the way up to the Arctic coast, and mid-20s coming into St. Lawrence Island with that southerly flow, mid-30s Pribilofs, and upper 30s, lower 40s for the Aleutians, followed by lows Saturday morning, even colder in the Copper River Basin, still cold for the Kuskokwim Valley, and seeing some below zero temperatures again, Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, Friday morning, first graphic here. IFR with that next front coming in over the western Aleutian, southwest Bering Sea, and then areas of marginal VFR. Up until you get to the southwest coast, you've got VFR from Togiak Bay, northern Bristol Bay, Nunivak Island, right up northward there through the Bering Strait, and a good portion of the Arctic coast, North Slope, and Brooks Range. Some lingering IFR over toward Kaktovik, Barter Island area, down across the Arctic Village Zone, and then back southeastward across Porcupine River. Marginal VFR from Eagle down across the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, most of the Alaska Range, and into the northern Copper River Basin. Southern Alaska, though, VFR becoming VFR with North Gulf Coast holding on to some marginal VFR, Montague Island to Cape St. Elias into Yakutat, and then the Panhandle not looking too shabby. And for the day, or for the afternoon tomorrow, got some marginal VFR back into the southern southeast coast. Otherwise, northern areas VFR. All of interior Alaska becomes VFR under high pressure building in from the Arctic coast right down to Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR pressing up along the Yukon Delta coast in across Nunivak Island, and a little bit there for the Alaska Peninsula, Falls Pass. Looks like eastern Aleutians tomorrow afternoon, VFR, with marginal for the Pribilof, St. Lawrence Island, narrow band of IFR with that front from St. Matthew Island down to Adak. And for the day Saturday morning, to start the day for Saturday morning, IFR from the Bering Strait across St. Lawrence Island. Again, that's frontal boundary slowly moving eastward. And so IFR for the Pribilofs down to east of Atka, but just pushing in toward Nikolsky by early morning Saturday. Marginal VFR for the remainder of the Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay VFR, good over the interior. Looks like there could be some marginal VFR areas along the Yukon, mid and upper Yukon River Valley in the flats there. But that should be north of the greater Fairbanks area. Tanana will probably be in it, but southern Alaska stays VFR, as well as the northern three-quarters of the Panhandle. Got some IFR there over toward Stewart and Hyder, maybe as far west as possibly Ketchikan and Annette. And then for the afternoon Saturday, lingering marginal VFR southeastern portions of the southeast coast, and some marginal VFR out in the Gulf of Alaska. Interior Alaska, all VFR again, and marginal for the, or IFR pushing into the Yukon Delta there. Cape Newenham, Nunivak Island to St. Lawrence Island across the Alaska Peninsula. Marginal VFR pushing into Bristol Bay, but not quite making it to Igigik or King Salmon, but close. And then looks like pushing up towards Sitkinak, some marginal VFR. Otherwise, Kodiak Island VFR. VFR, Pribilofs, Fox Islands, and Adak and Atka. So not too bad in the Bering Sea. And for the passes tomorrow, Friday, Anatuvik, VFR. VFR also for Adigan. Lake Clark on Merrill, good VFR. And for Rainy, also looking good, VFR. But windy starting, will be VFR with marginal VFR becoming VFR in the northern entrance. So northern entrance of windy Isabel Mentasta starting out marginal and then becoming VFR throughout the day. And for Tanita, VFR. Portage, good VFR. wide open for Chilkoot and White. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet south of Dixon Entrance, actually right over the Queen Charlotte's there, and southerly flow pushing the surface freezing level all the way up to the Russian coast there, but 2,000 feet lagging way to the south, not quite making it to AKwx. And icing could be some, little bit of a chance of some moderate or considerable moderate rime icing pushing into the central Aleutians along that frontal boundary, but not too serious. And then icing threats exiting the panhandle, but kind of hanging on to the area there through tomorrow. And jet stream ridging, pushing eastward slowly, making its way into the west coast, so northwest 75 to 95 knots out of the north-northwest across central interior, 90 to 105 out from the southwest over the southwest Bering Sea, and 135 knots from the southwest over the panhandle. 9,000 feet showing the stronger wind max at this level, mostly south and east of the panhandle. Northerlies 50 knots south of Kodiak Island, so lighter winds over the interior. And then the big increase in the winds over the central Bering Sea ahead of that next storm, which about 60 to 70 knots ahead of that front. And turbulence-wise, moderate chop, mechanical, Kodiak Island, southern Alaska over the mountainous terrain, and the eastern Aleutians.
Hey Vern, it's the equinox. Thanks for watching Stargazers. March 20th is the vernal equinox, when our sun is directly over the equator and night and day are equal. The vernal equinox is also known as the first point of Aries because the sun would pass through that constellation at this time of year, but that is not actually the case anymore. Now it passes through Pisces, and this is because of precession. Precession is the wobble of Earth's axis. Like a top, we're flopping back and forth as we spin in orbit. This wobble causes Earth's rotational axis to trace out a cone in the night sky, and over time, the stars actually move, about a pinky on an outstretched arm every 72 years. So in 26,000 years, Vega will be the North Star and not Polaris. Traditional vernal equinox parties involve celebrations of fertility and spring, so enjoy yourself this week and keep looking up.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and we have a special guest in the studio today. We welcome Amanda Terborg of the Aviation Weather Center. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amanda's flown in all the way from Kansas City, and for those of you that don't know, the Aviation Weather Center serves the lower 48 for aviators, just as the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit here in Anchorage serves all of Alaska. So I kind of wonder, what's the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City doing to help out Alaska, Amanda?
Yeah, you know, we do a lot of collaboration work with our sister station up here. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work, especially in the satellite meteorology.
Okay.
In particular, we have been looking at ways to better identify icing conditions in clouds, which is a big deal up here because, as I'm coming to find out, even though I'm not from here, you guys have a lot of pilots here.
You have a lot of pilots. In fact, when you say you can't get there from here, that's how you get there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so with icing potential then, what's Kansas City working on?
Well, we are working on something that will help us, again, identify the icing in the clouds. You don't want ice on your aircraft.
No.
Not only does it add a whole bunch of extra weight to your airframe when it attaches to the wings and the nose cone, but it can also mess with your aerodynamics.
Right.
And in the most serious conditions, that can mess with it enough that you can actually crash.
It changes the shape of the wing, and that makes it sometimes impossible to fly, right?
It does, yeah. So we want to figure out a way to better forecast for that.
Makes sense.
Now this particular image is over Alaska. The colors here are a little goofy. It doesn't look like your run-of-the-mill satellite image.
Okay.
But the red is where you have liquid clouds and the blue is ice. But again, it really doesn't tell you a lot where you have icing conditions in that cloud. Because in those clouds there's little droplets and they're cold and they're actually below freezing, but they're still liquid. And that makes them sticky.
Okay.
So when an aircraft flies through there, those droplets are sticking to the aircraft and it can happen amazingly fast.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to find. And there is a product called the Aircraft Flight Icing Threat that does this. And it's basically looking at the temperature of the cloud, and it's also looking at the size of the droplets to identify a probability and intensity of those icing conditions.
Okay.
And if you flip to the next image, this is a case from Juneau, Alaska, where this probably wouldn't have been the best day to fly around Juneau.
Okay.
Now there was an area of moisture that pushed south from the southwest up along the coast that pushed in a stratus layer. And in the stratus layer, there was a lot of those super cooled liquid drops, or a lot of stickiness.
Okay.
And so the flight icing threat was able to, in the pinks and the reds there, was able to identify where that icing was. Now this is really cool. You know, it's really cool to be able to identify that. There is, you know, of course, caveats to every product. Much as we wish it would happen, sun doesn't shine all the time, unless, I guess, if you live in northern Alaska during the summertime.
Right.
But we need that sun to be able to bounce off those clouds and to be able to see where those super cool drops are.
Okay, so it's a daytime only tool.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, of course, you know, we're in the era of advanced satellite technology, and there is a satellite that can actually use moonlight to see clouds.
Yes.
And so sometime in the future, we hope to be able to do that.
Okay.
Another thing that is a bit of a challenge is multiple layers of clouds. You know, you can only see so far through a thick cloud.
Okay.
And if it's thick enough, sometimes you can't see a layer of icing that's below there.
Right.
But even besides those caveats, this product has a lot of potential to help out Alaskan aviators here.
Well, it sounds like a really big deal, and something that forecasters at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit could use probably on a daily basis, and especially in the middle of a really big storm.
Yeah, I would think so.
Do you have a really good success story in the lower 48 using this tool?
You know, it's a fairly new product, and so we're still evaluating it. But yeah, we've had a lot of cases where we have seen that it does tend to capture those icing conditions.
Okay, very good. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for sharing some of the very interesting satellite imagery and the tools that you're using there at the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City with us here in Alaska. People can probably find some of this information online, right?
Yeah, here is a website here. It's a page from NASA Langley, and they have this imagery as well as a bunch of other satellite imagery that you can take a look at.
Okay, great. And I'm sure our friends at the Alaska Aviation Weather Center and the unit will be using that in the coming months there with your training and your help there to learn more about that tool to help Alaska aviators any day of the year. That's wonderful stuff. So thanks again for joining us, Amanda, and we welcome you to view any of our Alaska weather facts on YouTube anytime at the address below, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with the Marine Weather segment for today. And looking at the edge of the sea ice, it extends now south of St. Matthew to off the southwest coast. And as we head over the next couple of days, Friday into Saturday, we're going to see a gale to near storm force, southeast to south winds moving into the western coastline. And that's going to cause the ice to retreat northward at the rate of about 15 to 30 nautical miles a day. And also the recently formed ice along the edge there will tend to break up and melt with that increased wind and wave action. So Friday's marine weather forecast for the southeast, we are looking for winds to be generally out of the north at around 10 knots, with waves running 2 to maybe 3 feet from Juneau southward to Ketchikan. Winds will be coming onshore, at least the open waters there at about 10 to 15 knots, waves running right around 11 feet. From Yakutat westward, winds will still have an easterly component up to 20 knots and waves 9 to 10 feet. On Saturday, look for winds to be generally out of the north to northeast, the inner waterways, and waves running 2 to 3 feet, though a little bit more wind up there towards Skagway from the northwest at 25 knots and some 5-foot waves. Offshore flow out of the northeast for the open waters around 20 knots, waves 8 to 10 feet. And as we head off into areas further west, south central, we'll see winds in the inner waters from the north at 25 knots at Prince William Sound with 4-footers. But notice the mouth of Cook Inlet, still northwest winds up to 35 knots, waves around 10 feet. In areas offshore of the Kenai could still see northerly winds of 30 to 40 knots, waves 8 to 10 feet. On Saturday, look for north winds continuing across, at least northerly component to the wind continuing across the area with 15 knots at Prince William Sound and some 2-footers. The mouth of Cook Inlet north at 20 knots, 6-foot waves, and then generally offshore of Kodiak Island, it could be as high as 25 knots with some 7-footers. On Friday for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, still some northwest winds around Kodiak Island of 30 to 40 knots and waves over 10 feet offshore. On the Bering side, we're looking at north winds up there toward Bristol Bay out of the north at 20 knots, waves 6 feet, but quickly beginning to turn around to the south there across the Aleutian chain. On Saturday, look for the flow to begin to turn more toward the east, southeast, and south as we go through the day and pick up the further west you are. Around 25 knots offshore of Kodiak Island with waves 5 to 8 feet, but there in the southern areas around Cold Bay as well as Sand Point, southeast to south winds 40 knots and waves building into the mid and upper teens. The Aleutian Islands will see gale to near storm force winds from the south to southwest at 40 to 50 knots. Highest waves will be from Adak westward, where they can be running 25 to near 30 feet. On Saturday, winds will turn more toward the southwest and west, 30 to 40 knots. Waves generally running from 15 to just over 20 feet. And along the west coast, south of the ice edge, south winds 40 knots, waves 15 to near 25 feet. Out over the ice areas, southeasterly flow of 25 upwards to near 40 knots. And then heading into Saturday, open water areas will see south to south winds of 40 knots with waves 15 to 20 feet. Ice areas will see winds continuing with a southeasterly component of 35 to 45 knots. And then along the Arctic coast, southerly winds will be developing at about 15 to 20 knots, especially from Prudhoe Bay westward. South of Wainwright down toward Kotzebue, we are looking at southeast to south winds picking up to 35 to near 40 knots. And on Saturday, along the Arctic coast, southeast winds of 20 to 25 knots, whereas areas south of Wainwright, especially down through Kotzebue and into Norton Sound, where you are looking at southeast to south winds of 40 to near 50 knots. And a quick check of the surface maps. We have an area low pressure that remains out over the Gulf of Alaska. And we also have a stronger system, though, through the western Aleutians. That is the one that is going to be bringing the gale to near storm force winds across the west and northwest coast here as we go through Friday and into Saturday. So keep safety in mind. Watching some of those areas, the shoreline ice could break up a bit. Otherwise, enjoy your upcoming weekend. We appreciate you watching the Alaska Weather Show. And if you would like additional information, you can always go online and check out weather.gov/Alaska. Thank you for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.